Okay. So
Can you show the screen, please? Slideshow.
I'm trying to. Maybe I can have the assistance of the present organizer to make it work.
So this point, just click this. Yes, it's done. Please.
So ladies and gentlemen, my name is Martin Jacobson. I'm from Sweden. I live in Indonesia. Due to suddenly closing borders, I ended up in Sweden now during the corona. I would like to share with you, normally I work with Supertext, which is a communication platform that works without internet in Indonesia. I would like to share with you a little bit about what's happening in Sweden as a different perspective on the situation of the COVID-19. And I'm going to talk about, in Sweden, we have no lockdown and the effect this has. Is sound and image okay, Doctor?
Very clear. Very clear.
Very good. Thank you. So just quickly about Supertext, you understand the background. Our mission is to bridge the digital divide and support communities across the Indonesian archipelago by providing communication. I come from Sweden. We're bringing the Swedish communication technology to Indonesia. My background is I'm a scientist in molecular biotechnology, and I'm a computer geek, and I'm an entrepreneur building companies. This is my third company, and I believe Indonesia is the future. I also believe in Indonesia in Corona times is still the future, and I'm looking very much forward to coming back once the airlines start going again, so I can come back to my house in Indonesia. Supertext is a chat platform that works without internet. It's like WhatsApp or Twitter, but by being partners with Telkomsel, Indosat, and XL, we're able to provide a communication that always works, also for the people that have low connectivity and maybe not even have a smartphone, which is, in my estimation, between 120 and 160 million people in Indonesia. And communication, especially in Corona time, is very, very important. As a part of this, we did a small project to provide a COVID-19 chatbot that also works without internet, inspired by the World Health Organization and following closely the work of BNPP and UDM in the local languages of Indonesia, Javanese, Sundanese, Balinese, etc. Because there's so much hoax and fear going around. I see it in the village I live in, Bali. I see it everywhere. In my own WhatsApp groups. So if we can provide a communication channel that creates a little bit of clarity to support support government in their very, very big challenge of communication. In every country in the world now there is hoax and fear, and communication from the government is very, very important. So this is a very, very difficult job that the government is doing, and as a private company, if we can support this, why not do it? So that was very short about Supertext. Coming back to talking about the Swedish perspective, it was very, very interesting to hear Bapak Doni Monardi explaining the Indonesian situation. I feel honored to listen to these insights. In Sweden, it appears, maybe if we're lucky, that we have peaked in the coronavirus without having a lockdown and without too much economic damage. The damage is, of course, very severe for the economy, but it is much more smaller than in the neighboring European countries today. Sweden is an export country. Everything we do is about export, and everything we consume is 50% is maybe imported. So the global economy is, of course, very, very critical to our economy. But being able to go through Corona without lockdown has been so far something very controversial and receiving a lot of criticism. But in Sweden, the population and the media in general support this strategy and believe it is the good strategy. The numbers I will share, everything is from the Swedish Health Ministry, and some of this are interpreted by the epidemiologists published and discussing this in the mainstream Swedish media. There's a lot of scientists discussing in the Swedish media today. Now with the Bapakdoni's good explanation, I'm sort of adding to this, repeating a little bit. So in the Swedish perspective, if you have had COVID-19, you are immune, or most people are immune. You make people ill when you touch them or breathe on them. That's when you have the chance of spreading it. And the virus doesn't last on the surfaces for more than a few hours or days. The R value as viewed in Sweden for this, the initial value at 2.6, same as in Indonesia, which means that for herd immunity to work, you would need 40% of the population to have had the virus before it stops spreading and the whole population is immune, or the whole population is protected. Today in Sweden, with no lockdown, we said that we need 2.6 for at the R value 0. How can we reduce the R value? We don't touch each other, we don't breach on each other, and we minimize how many people we meet. All of these, everything we do adds up. So in Sweden, there has been no law, there has been no police, there has been no force used, because it's very difficult to change the laws in Sweden. So they cannot really implement anything like what's being done in many other countries. But the effect has been that the R value now, due to the voluntary social distancing in the school, in the university, in society, in the work, the R value is now estimated to be 1.3. So that's half. So we have halved the speed of spreading of the virus in Sweden due to voluntary measures by the population. So at an R value of 1.3, what does it take to stop the epidemic? Well, we need to have 23% immune to stop the epidemic, because at 1.3, if you take that, you spread it to 1.3 and 20% are immune, or 23% are immune, then it will not spread it. Every person that gets ill will spread it to less than one person. So by May, it was estimated by the Ministry of Health that in Sweden we have 26% of the population have had COVID-19. This is not a certain number, and it's very debatable, especially with the antibody measures, where there are two types of interpretations. But if it was 26% on the 1st of May, and today we are at the 15th of May, it's likely to be more, maybe 30%. And that means that the effective spreading will be below 1. It means that we are now seeing the end of the epidemic in Sweden. That's what the numbers tells us. If we look at the statistical image that I showed, it also reflects this same image. I can go back. So you see here on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the Swedish situation, where we're maybe seeing the reduction and the end. Now, we have had many more people dead than in Norway or Finland or Denmark, our neighbors with a similar social situation. Like Bapakdoni mentioned, I do not live with my parents. Most people do not live with their parents, etc. So there's a different situation than Indonesia. But in Sweden, we have more dead. But the difference is that we also have a higher level of immunity if this strategy works. It's still too early to know. So now it looks, on the short term, it looks terrible. But on the long term, maybe there can be no second wave for Sweden, because this is the only wave there is. That is the optimistic perspective on the Swedish strategy. So today we were talking about the consequences in the education sector. In Sweden, all the schools are open, and it's compulsory to go to school. If you do not come to school, the police will come and get your kids. But there is increased social distancing, and not all schools are open. The high school, from 16 to 18-year-old, they are on a distance. So the reason is like this is several. One is that they believe that the kids do not get ill, and they also believe that if the kids get ill, they are not so contagious. It doesn't spread from the kids. In the university sector, it has been recommended by the government to have everything on a distance except that which is really important to have in the university, which would be a laboratory in the chemistry, maybe arts classes for the artists. The exams are not allowed to cancel. They have to hold the exams, but the exams are not allowed to be in the school. They're not allowed to be physical. They have to be on a distance. So all the schools, all the rectors, all the principals have to find a strategy to hold the exams at a distance. They have to shift all the education into an online world at a distance. And this will be the recommendation until the 15th of October is the current timing. But I think the key difference here to many countries is that everything is sort of on a voluntary basis. There's nothing or almost no laws and regulations forcing this. And it means that if it's really important to someone on a personal level to do something, they can always do it. So that super expensive cost of blocking all everything, that one is avoided throughout society, in the education sector and all the other sectors. But it's of course painful, and it's of course hurting all industries in Sweden, just as everywhere else in the world. But it's still interesting and a little bit optimistic to see that it is possible to see the strong effect of purely social distancing and how it works in the Swedish society. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share today about the Swedish perspective. Maybe there are some questions. I'm not sure if I can answer all questions, but yeah.